kabang. Welcome to this meeting of the Fargo School Board. I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda with the HR addendum.
So moved.
Thank you. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Seeing as we have not had anyone sign up from the audience, we will go right into the staff reports. And Dr. Gross, please.
Great. Thank you very much. Attached to the agenda is Memo 14, and that is the mobility report for the last school year. Once a year we share with you, and then we post on our strategic plan dashboard the results of some of the data that we've been gathering about the number of students who come to us during the course of the school year and those who leave us over the course of the school year. So you can see that report that is attached to that memo. On page 2 of that report, it gives you just some of the overall general data. What we did this year is we provided you the data for the 2015 school year and the 16 school year, so you could compare those 2 years. And for the 2016 school year, you can see we, from the first day of school to the last day of school, had 1,040 students come and enroll in our district. And we had 1,183 who then exited and went to a different school district. And then you can see that it's similar information or similar numbers from the year previous. On the bottom of that page is just a graphic that will show you from the different levels, elementary, middle school, high school, and then a total of both the ins and the outs over the course of that school year. And then finally, on the last few pages of the report, starting on page 3, what we've provided for you is some more information about where those students came to us from and where those students then went. The first set of data, which is found on page 3, would be for elementary. The same color code system is used for the rest of the report. As you can see, that top graph, the orange then would be those students who came to us from the private school system. Going around that wheel, the blue, dark blue, is the students who came someplace from North Dakota, not West Fargo, because that would be that next section in red. Moving around the graph in green, you'll see those are the students from Minnesota, not Moorhead, because to its left is the students or the percentage of students who came to us from Moorhead. And then finally, that light blue is the students who came to us from someplace other than Minnesota or North Dakota. And then the graph below that is similar information of the students where they left and went to if they did exit the Fargo Public Schools. And that same data is then found on page 5 for the middle school and page 6 for our high school. This data is used, like I said, as we posted on our strategic plan dashboard site for our public to know and see. We also use it as we begin to think about planning for future years and have conversation with our principals. With that, that's the information. I would answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Dr. Gross. Anybody have any questions or comments? John.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Dr. Gross. I'm looking at the transfer in and transfer out numbers on page 2 in that table. And it looks like we had more middle school and high school students transfer out than transferred in. And is there anything to be deduced from that, or not to have you speculate, but is that a long-term trend? We've seen growing enrollments in our district. Is there any other way for me to interpret this? Thank you.
This data is from the beginning of the school year to the as we look at any of our data, that first day is always because we do. But this then just takes us from there moving forward. Really, the families make the decision if they are going to come and relocate to the Fargo Public Schools, or if their families find employment or some other reason to leave us. There really isn't anything that I can deduce from that information other than this was the choices that the families made, either coming to us or moving.
Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Good, thanks. Dr. Schatz, you had?
I'll just add to that if you really want to see the changes in growth on the web, what we look at is what was it last year on the first day, what is it this year? at the end of the year, what is it last year, what is it this year? This year just simply shows you. And so if you go to those monthly reports, you can keep track of that. Okay.
Great. Yes, Jennifer?
One more question. I'm curious, how does this compare to other districts the same size? Do we know?
That is a very good question, and that is data that I don't have available. But I could certainly do some additional research to find the answer.
Thank you. Dr. Schatz?
I don't have the specific numbers in front of me, but I'll tell you West Fargo probably has a very similar mobility rate. My experience in Grand Forks was that also. The larger school districts, especially along the interstate lines, were connected to the cities. You know, a lot of these places are where people come from or go to. And so we see similar numbers. Usually that 8 to 10% is what we see in those mobility rates. And so in our district, we've been seeing a little bit higher than 10%. And since I've been here, in the 7 years I've been here, it's been about that. And so I don't think you're going to see big differences in some of those other schools. You're going to see a lot of similarities. And I will tell you, Moorhead has a lot of in and out too. So it's just a mobile society and jobs and all that kind of stuff.
So one of the reasons I asked just as a follow-up question is really, does this present us with unique challenges in comparison to some other districts? And then what might those be and how do we address them?
I don't think it presents us any other unique challenges than any other challenges that we have. I just think that we have, you know, we're a community that's growing, but we're also a community that's mobile. A lot of apartment buildings in this community, and a lot of jobs that people come and go for and leave for other reasons. And it's just, we have a lot of people that come in and go. So
I have a question for Dr. Gross and Dr. Agri. One of the selling points of Common Core and standards that are more standardized across the country was that kids who come from other states, you know, there used to be such a huge disparity sometimes of what kids had or didn't have. Has that had any impact when kids come and go in the middle of the school year? Is that kind of focusing in that they're kind of on the same planet in terms of curriculum and where they're at?
I guess I would say that's our hope, but with Common Core standards and teachers teaching to those and switching up curriculum happens slowly. So I don't know that we've seen that across the board. We've really tried hard in Fargo schools that as our kids are mobile within West Fargo, with the Metro Collaborative and with us really trying to be a more systemic versus silos, that if a fourth grader moves from Lewis and Clark to Lincoln, the teachers are on a similar pace, teaching to the same standards. But I would anticipate that that was the premise behind that would eventually happen. We just haven't seen it yet.
Thank you. And Dr. Gross, you had a thought?
And then I would just add to that, as we've continued to work with our partners, not only with the content standards of the course of biology or mathematics, we've done the same as we look at those 21st century skills of communication, critical thinking, collaboration, and truly how are they the same, which they are now between our three districts because of the work that we've done together, both with our staff, teaching staff, but our administrative staff. So that really helps families and students as they move from one district to the other within the metro area.
Great, thank you. Yes, David.
Linda?
David and then Rebecca.
I can tell you from experience that when you get into the middle school and the high school, since a class, whether it's biology or science or whatever, is broken down into sections, that it becomes more of a problem because depending on how, in what chronological order the teachers took it, you might have a student come in who's, you know, skipped an entire section and you've already covered it. They hadn't gotten to it, you're done with it, so, you know, those things happen.
Rebecca.
Dr. Gross, I know that this report does not include information in regard to tracking dropouts, but I'm just wondering, I know I asked this question also last year, how we track that information and when we receive reports on that. Could you please share that information in regard to the time frame of when we receive that information?
Rebecca, this year we pulled it out of this report because I didn't feel that it truly reflected the full report on dropouts, and so we're taking a look at that, and we're going to be developing a report for that and coming to you later on that. We do report that to the state of North Dakota, and so there is that percentage that goes with the state assessment, and so we look at that. But I just felt that there needs to be a little bit more of an analysis to that, and that report itself should stand on its own. So we'll be coming to you with something once we have it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good discussion. Anyone else? All right. Thank you, Dr. Gross and everyone, for pulling this together and bringing us this report. Appreciate it. As we were talking about the all-staff event coming up in a couple weeks, and we're doing a couple things differently this year, and there have been some questions as to what expectations are of board members and what that's all about. I thought it would be a good idea for Dr. Schatz to kind of update us, give us kind of an overview of what it's going to be, some of the new things, and then what our role will be. So, if you would.
Okay, well, I'll start out by stating that Anne Marie and her team have been the ones that have been working on this and pulling all the different groups together to make this happen. Today there was a meeting to kind of go through the final checklist with those folks that are doing all the planning, but I can give you a little bit of the concept of what we're doing this year. We felt that this year it's going to be really important that we have our community support what we do in education, and that our theme should really be all about community, and that, you know, community working together, supporting the educational system that we have is going to make us strong and continue to be able to do all the great things that we do. And so in that light, what we did was, when I went out and visited with community leaders, we asked them if they would be willing to be part of a video that we would show at the beginning. And so those folks have been interviewed, and there's a video that's being put together. We've done that video at the beginning of the event the last couple of years, but this year it's going to feature our community leaders, and we've also invited them to join us. That'll go right in line with the speaker, Jamie Vollmer, for those of you who had the chance to hear him last year. His theme is community and support of a community for its school system, and so that fits directly within that. The other thing I am very excited about is that a couple of years ago we decided to reach out to our theater folks, and there will be a musical review again this year where they're bringing pieces and parts from all three of the musicals that were held last year, and so the students will be practicing that and performing for us in that area. We will have, again, comments from our board president, comments from David Marquardt, our FEA president, and I have talked to both of them about the concept of community, and so we'll all be on the same page there. And then what I really like about this event is the recognition of our staff, and so we'll again be recognizing all the folks who've been nominated this past year for support staff, administrator, or teacher of the year, and then the folks who won that will each have an opportunity to say a few words to the group. And then I'm going to spend probably 20 or 30 minutes trying to wrap it all together after anticipating what you might do tonight here, talking about what we face as we move forward and what our challenge will be this year, and try to rally the troops. With regard to your responsibilities at this event, I'm going to turn to Anne Marie and ask if she would share with you what she would like to see you do and how she'd like to see you involved.
Yeah, that was really a conversation last year at the Communications Committee, that they would really like the board more involved in that event. And so the Communications Committee thought it'd be good to serve as greeters at that event. If you've been to the Shields Arena, you know that there's the main entry level when you come in that first lobby area. That's where we have our greeters. That's where we'd like you stationed. And then you go up the stairs, and there's a little bit of a walkway and another lobby area. And that upper lobby area, that's where we're going to have some beverages and some snacks for people to grab on their way in. So if you would be in that main first lobby area, that would be great. You will have reserved seating on the floor of the Shields Arena, so you will need to try to make your way there a little bit before 8. There'll be a staircase and all the way down to the floor that you can take to get there. Those of you who've been there before, you know where you'll be. You'll be in that first section. In the middle of the section, we'll have reserved seats for you, so we'll just need to make sure you get there plenty of time before we start. And then Linda will be speaking, and we'll note the rest of you that are there. So I'm not sure exactly how she's going to recognize you, but she will recognize you in the audience as well. And so there will be a reserved seat for you. So I will take RSVPs to make sure we know who will be there, and make sure I have the right name plaques out there for you, and have a seat reserved for you. So
Great, thank you. Dinah?
Probably goes without saying, but don't forget your name tags, especially the newbies, because not everybody, well, there's people who still don't know who we are who've been around for 10 years, but certainly the newbies, so wear your name tags.
Also bring a jacket, it's freezing in there. Yes, Jennifer?
And I was going to comment about traffic, but as well. So give yourself enough time to get there and find a parking spot. But did you say doors open at 7:15?
Doors open at 7:15. That is what we advertise. We do have people that are Johnny on the spot and are there even before 7:15. So we do have people arriving right away. So yes, make sure you travel accordingly and plan your travel so you get there in time. We will publish some suggested routes for people to take to get there. This year, there won't be road construction around the arena. On the major thoroughfares, there's some kind of on the back ways a little bit, but not on the major thoroughfares like last year. But you'll want to give yourself plenty of time to get there and be there ready to go probably about 7:15.
Great. Dinah?
Just one question, if we get there before 7:15, we can still get in, like put our coats down on our chairs and come back to the lobby?
Yep, we'll have people there starting about 5:30. So if depending on how early you want to be,
I wasn't thinking about
yeah,
that.
the doors will be open and people will be there. So absolutely.
Okay, 5:30 wasn't in the plan, but
Yeah, no.
7 maybe.
Dr. Schatz?
So just to give you a sense of the size of this event, we have about 1,800 employees that'll be invited to this. We made a commitment a couple of years ago when we started having this at this event out at the Shields that we actually shut our schools and our system down that morning. So we'll be posting information at the school doors and things, letting people know that from 8 until noon, we'll be involved in a district-wide event. And I know it's a busy time, people are trying to register, those types of things, but we felt it was important to have everybody there and have made that commitment to do that. So 1,800 folks, the event is going to last until probably up to noon, just so you know. And then after that, we're done. And that'll kick off our year. That's 2 weeks from yesterday. So we're getting close, and summer is basically over. So there you go.
Anyone else? Great, well, thank you. And if you haven't let Anne Marie know yet, your RSVP, please do that as soon as you can. I would entertain a motion for the items on the consent agenda.
I move we accept the items on the consent agenda, including the additional HR item.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same. Approved, thank you. So this brings us to our strategic plan review. And Dr. Schatz, please.
Thank you. Tonight, what I present to you is the strategic plan that we put in place this past year for the first year. What we have done is taken a look at the strategic plan now that we've had that 1 year of implementation, and we have made suggestions for some minor adjustments to it that reflect practice and update the strategic plan, if you will. If you know, as you know, with all of our plans, we have the 1 year review, and so tonight this is the review for this. And what we're asking you to do is to provide any feedback or ask questions if you have them after I walk you through it. And if we're good to go, then we reaffirm the strategic plan and we continue to put it into implementation. And what would come next to you, it would be our operational plan, which is then the work that we're going to be focusing on from this plan. So this is the first step in that. I'll walk you through very quickly. You've all been presented this previously, but one of the things that I did change on page 1 is we had this originally planned to be reviewed in June, but it makes more sense now to do this in August. That gives us the summer to review it and to get comments from our different departments. And as we move forward to next year, what I'm going to suggest to the board is that at the summer retreat, we take another look at this, and particularly when I get to the last page of this about consideration for future study, that we engage the board in that conversation so that if there are things that you as a board would like to see administration go out and research and look into, that we update this part of the strategic plan, because what's in here was reflected when this was put together. And I made notes on that last page indicating where that's at currently. But I know that there will be things that come up that folks might say, you know, let's study this or let's look into that. So August is when we will bring it to you next year. Hopefully in the retreat, we'll have that as part of our discussion and the ability for everybody to kind of weigh in, okay? If you move through, and I'm just going to run right to the pages where we had changes. Page 8, what you're going to see a lot in the success or results, indicators of success, you're going to see some word changing there, updating a little bit of the terminology to reflect our practice. And a lot of that would happen from the teaching and learning team, Bob's team. And so it's semantics, if you will. It doesn't change the intent. It just is updating to some language that we're using now. If you go to page 9, you will see in goal 1 of STEAM, indicators of success or results, the Metro project portal is now how we're going to measure that. And the reason why now we've changed that is because the work that we've been able to do with Education at Works, the collaboration we have with Moorhead, West Fargo, that evolved more last year, and so now this is where it's at, and that's why the change. And so it's not changing anything with regard to intent, it's just now this reflects the actual practice that we're going to employ. If you move on to page 13, one of the things that we did not include when we did our original strategic plan is we did not include the Development Foundation, the Fargo Public Schools Development Foundation, so we felt we needed to add that. So we talked to Becky, and so we've added that and just adjusted the goals down. So that would be goal 2 under community outreach and communications, that we continue to engage with that group. And then you can see the indicators of success or results. Those are things she comes to you and talks about when she does her report. So it makes sense to put that in as that's what we would use for indicators. Education at Works, again, that has evolved through, again, another year of work. And so what you see on the next page are just the changes in terminology, language that Jodelle and her team working with that group along with Bob felt that that updated this and made it better, and this is what we actually will be tracking moving forward. College and university partnerships, one item that, well, 2 things here. We are now implementing the Teacher Leadership Academy. It's not develop, it's implementation, so we changed that language. And continue to partner with the University of North Dakota Resident Teacher Program. We felt that we needed to add that because that's something we're doing, and probably at the time didn't get that in there, and so it's a good time to add that. If you move again to page 15, we had Denise Jonas review this area, and so her suggestion was that we wrap this into one bundle, and that's what she did there. So a lot of the areas or indicators of success have been wrapped into that one singular statement, and so that was the change there. Another change that we have on page 16 and that we're excited about, and I think most of you have heard this, but we have reorganized our resources to address more specifically not only mental health issues, but drug alcohol issues, issues of dropouts, issues of connectedness to our community and resources that we have. Earlier today I sat at a public forum with Heidi Heidkamp speaking about all the different entities working together in the city to address opiates, mental health, all these types of things that affect our community. And so what we're doing in our school district is we're realigning existing resources, if you will. We're taking what was available to us through the student health and mental wellness facilitators. We had 2. We had added, if you remember a year ago, Amy Riccio in dropout prevention. We had on staff a person working with drug alcohol, and that's been with us for a long time, so that's 4 people. And then we took 2 other positions that were outsourced and contracted through another agency, and we are taking those in-house. And so we're taking these 6 folks and we're reorganizing the effort to have 2 people that are assigned in each sector of our community. So the 3 high schools and the 3 middle schools. So we have 2 people working at North and Ben Franklin, 2 people working with South and Carl Ben, 2 people working at Davies and Discovery. And their main focus, once we get this organized and get the right people on board, will be to address all of those issues and to be a resource to the school staff, to the counselors, to the administration, connectedness to community agencies and organizations to help families find their way through the system when they need assistance, and to also track and work with students who leave the regular high school setting to go to an alternative setting, Woodrow Wilson. And that was Amy's job when we first hired her. And so what we feel is that by having the 6 people on board, focusing 2 people in each one of those sectors, it'll give us a much better chance to take those resources and to use those resources in a very meaningful way. And so we're very excited about that. Again, it's taking existing resources. So this isn't any addition. It's just I think, reflecting the focus that we need to be focused on now in doing this at this time. So that's what we did here is we took and realigned, readjusted this whole area. And so now goal 6 is all of that in one. And so we collapsed the other two. And so that'll be something that we'll be rolling out here real soon. And then on page number 17, just a couple other minor things. And Anne Marie is introducing us to the word analytics, which I like. Website analytics. As you know, she's brought to you all sorts of data and statistics in the past and continues to work with that piece of it. And then, let's see here, we had Brittany go through and look at all the HR pieces that we had and goals in those areas. And so what she's done here is really updated some language. And when you look at comprehensive teacher orientation program, she rewrote this because, and I know this because I think I have 7 or 8 introductions and welcoming that I do for orientations. But we're doing orientations for all employees, not just teachers, but for, new paras, new substitute teachers. So all of our folks get orientation. So this reflects that we are now doing all different groups of our employees, and so it's very robust. And so she changed that language to reflect that. It's more than just teachers. So as you look then at the overall strategic plan and you go to the last page, that's what I talked about earlier. My suggestions for the retreat next summer is to have a time where the board and administration visit about what are some concepts, ideas, and it's probably pretty timely from your school board, National School Board report out. After you've been there, when we have these ideas and concepts that come up, we never really have time to talk about it. So it might be time to do that at there. And then if we identify that as an item for future study, because what I would see happening next year is we would probably take these off and add any new ones that we have. So we keep our strategic plan very up to date and mobile. So having said all of that and walking you through it, if you have any questions, we're prepared to answer.
Thank you, Dr. Schatz. Any questions? Jennifer and then Jim.
First of all, thank you for the update and highlighting. It's helpful to see the highlighted areas of change or additions. My question or comment would be around the strategic initiative number 7 and advanced ed, our most recent advanced ed accreditation review. And I see many standards highlighted here and indicators of success. I'm just wondering if maybe you could verbalize for us how that changed this, or what might have changed or was added as a result in terms of things that we're doing to meet those recommendations.
What you see here is the outline of what we use to look at for continuous improvement and accountability. What came from that report were recommendations for us to do as a district. You will see that in the operational plan. So you're not seeing it here, but you will see those 2 major recommendations they had. There'll be, as a matter of fact, in the operational plan, when I give that to you, what I do is I try to provide some highlights in the front of it, and when I do the introduction, and that you'll see that as one of them, is that'll be studied, looked at, and developed the process for how we'll do that. So you'll see that. Mm-hmm.
Jim.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that we adopt the changes as provided in memo number 13 to the district's strategic plan.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion or questions? John?
I have a few, so hopefully bear with me. Several of the indicators of success mention an annual report to the board. Is there a calendar for those?
If you look at the results policies that we have, you'll see that we have that embedded throughout the results. And you will see that there are, if you look at the agenda planner for the board for each month that we go through in governance, you'll see that there are reports all the way through that where we come to you during the year. So there are many of these things that are coming to you during those monthly meetings. And so you'll see that as you walk through the first year. Yep.
That schedule is also included in GP8E in your policies as well.
Rebecca, did I hear you have a question?
I do. Dr. Schatz, thank you. I appreciate the additional information and the work that is being done on the mental health situation and incorporating that into the initiative number 5. My question is in regard to some comments or, I guess, inquiries that I have received from parents that have had, that have children that have some needs in regard to dyslexia, autism, some of those special circumstances where those students need some additional help. Does that fall on, I think it falls under student achievement and growth, which would be number 1, but I wanted to confirm that.
Thank you. Dr. Schatz?
What I would tell you is that is a kind of a two-angle approach there. It falls under the MTSS process where we identify students who need additional help. That is also part of the job of our special education department. And you're not aware of this yet, but I haven't brought it to you because we just aren't ready to do so. But last year I did ask Patty, as our director now of special education, to convene a task force to take a look at the process we use to educate kids in the area of dyslexia. And so that's an ongoing process. I believe this fall we'll be coming to you and probably reporting to you what we're finding there and what we're thinking. So that has not been specifically written into a strategic plan, but that is more operational and ongoing. And so Rebecca, to answer your question, yes, it's on the horizon, and we'll be doing something with that.
Thank you. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. John?
Thank you. Another question about the indicators for success. Several of them mentioned metrics that will be reported on the dashboard. Has the dashboard been updated to reflect these new metrics yet?
Very happy to report to you that Stephen Duro has most of that uploaded now. So if you go to our website, look at the overall dashboard, click onto the different strategic initiatives, you will find that most of those areas now have something in there. There's still a couple that we're working on, and I would, I want to believe that by the end of the summer into this next year, we'll get that done. But, that whole building of that system has been quite a process, and I'm very excited about it because to give you an example of how great it is if you go under strategic initiative number 1, you can look now at the ACT scores, you can look at all the other types of scores that we're measuring in those results, and you can go in and you can dissect it in many different ways, you can look at it in a lot of different ways. That's what I'm using to prepare my introduction for the opener. And we're taking snapshots of some of the slides of that information, and so you'll hear about that when I do that. And that's just the front side of it. That doesn't show what teachers are using on the back side with some of the analytics that they have. And so, yes, to answer your question, I can never say anything in one word, is that it is uploaded and it's pretty robust. Nobody else has something as robust as this. So.
Thank you. John, did you have more?
I have another question. Thanks for bearing with me here. Particular area of focus for me professionally and as a personal passion is technology, the STEAM stuff. And one thing that, I know it's late in this project, but maybe for next year, is to look at K through 12 computer science and integrating that into our district. And throughout our partnership with Moorhead and West Fargo, back in even 2014, 60 districts in the country, including the 7 largest, committed to 5 to 10-year plans to adopt it. Our president in his last budget included $4 billion in grants to explore it. And so I think it's something that, given our community, we can definitely do. And so I would like us to look at that as a future strategic goal.
I was going to look at Bob and say, do you want to say anything about that?
I would say that is something that is on the forefront of what we do as we go through our curriculum review cycle. And as we look at the middle school, and we have started now Project Lead the Way for our students in grades 7 and 8. Part of that is the idea of technology and some coding pieces. In addition to that, with our partnership with West Fargo and Northern Cass through the CTE Collaborative, we've added a gaming class for technology and a coding class as well. So we're constantly looking at where we're at and what we can do to strengthen those areas.
Great, thank you.
The other thing I would tell you is if you look on the considerations for further study, I talked to Bill Westrick, and Bill's going to come up with a plan for him and his department to review where are we at with some of the technology now that we've implemented? And so, part of our operational plan, you'll see something in there about, we're gonna be looking at what are those best practices. And so, John, with the whole idea of computer application and courses in computers, we'll look at that and look at what's happening around the country. And I'm anticipating that report that we get from that will indicate what direction we feel we should go as a district. So, yeah, I believe it will be looked at, and it's something that we can consider.
Maybe the last one here then. Related to technology, and my passion for that is a recognition that it's not very diverse. It's predominantly white males that work in IT, that pursue these careers, that get that education. I would like us to, I know our focus right now is just getting those numbers up. I would like to see reports on the diversity of the attendance and participation of those. Is it just white males in our student population that are taking advantage of these? Is it just families that are relatively well-to-do? How many, kids are able to attend these that qualify for low or free lunches? Race diversity, cultural and background, gender diversity. I'd really like to see those reports. And maybe not even just for what's happening with our CTE programs and technology, but throughout all of our programs, all of our co-curricular activities, I'd really like to see diversity reports on that participation.
My first response would be that I think you would find that our IT team is probably 50-50 male-female. I don't know about the diversity part of that. I certainly can talk, and we can talk with Denise Jonas, because that would be a starting point for that kind of conversation, John. And when she does her report to the board, because she does come to you once a year, we can look at some numbers and try to see if we can't put a report together. So,
Very last one then. Then also our staffing, I'd like to see diversity reports on that. I don't know if that is part of our standard report from Human Resources, but our teacher staff and then the rest of our staff, the diversity of them compared to our student population would be great to see.
Go ahead.
Jim?
Jim?
Go ahead, Jim.
Could you help me understand what you mean there? Do you want to know how many of our staff are from California too? Or do we just want to know their current ethnic background, their race, their religion? Because some of what you're asking, I don't even think HR can ask an employee for legally. And I'm really just trying to understand what data you're looking to find.
Sure. And that's why I'm asking. I don't know what HR can provide us with that, but I do believe, especially in technology companies, they have acknowledged that there's a lacking of diversity. It's all basically white guys and maybe some Asian descent guys working in technology, and you're missing vital perspectives of Black, Latino, Native American, women perspectives in your organization. And so I want to know, is that an issue here? Is it not? Is it something that we need to address or not? And so basically gender, racial background is what I'm wondering. Thank you.
We can certainly take a look at it.
Great, thank you. Anyone else? Any other questions?
I
Go
do
ahead,
have
Brandy.
one. Getting back to what Rebecca said as far as, like the special needs and the stuff with the autistic children, is there any kind of education on how for these children to be, basically deal with being picked on, or, anything? Do we educate the kids, the parents, anything when it comes to any kind of, I'm not even going to use bullying because it could be a totally different scenario other than bullying. They could just look different, so they're going to be made fun of. What kind of education do we have for these kids to deal with the people that do it?
Dr. Augrey?
At the elementary level, the counselors have a pretty comprehensive program. It's built into the student planners, so if you have a child at home that's in the elementary schools, there's different inserts, and the counselor do in-classroom programs with all of the students. And there's also referral bases that can be by the teacher, it can be a student referral, or it can be a parent request. And then at the middle level, it moves into.
Well, then that just extends into the middle level in the high school, where our counselors are available for any student who comes to them with needs, if a parent comes to them with needs, the counselors are available. At the middle school, the way we are designed in teams, you have teams of teachers who then talk about students, who talk about the issues that they might have and how they can address them. And then that extends to our high school as well. So from education to our counselors to even how we've set up some of the schools.
So basically, it's like a one-on-one, so not everybody's getting the education of it. I mean, I guess is that what I'm understanding, or?
No, so the first part that I talked about within the planners, that's the core curriculum for the counseling program, and they do in classroom with all of the kids. So if I'm a school counselor, I will visit every second grade classroom 3 to 4 times a year with all of the students. And then on top of that, additionally, there is the one-on-one and referral system that we spoke about. And we've also had different board reports. We've talked about the district putting forth culture dollars, where buildings can have character education, culture camps. They have Friday morning activities where they teach these things cross grade level and practice the skills. They do a lot of work with the counselors as well as the classroom teachers, where they really have a culture and climate of being respectful. And a lot of it is the 6 traits, but it's very individualized building by building.
Okay, and that goes into middle school and high school also, correct? Not just the elementary. I mean, these kids need to know that throughout they kind of forget along the way.
Yes, the building culture plans are part of the middle school and the high school as well, as they talk about how do we ensure that all students feel safe where they're at. There are different teams at each of the buildings through their continuous improvement process, talking about and looking at the data that they get from surveys, and then putting in place different practices. And then the culture grant dollars are available so that each building can look at that and come up with some of those solutions.
I'd like to bring us back to this, but to suggest that if you have a certain interest in like an area of, policy that goes into, classroom management and the bullying policies, this or that, or you're curious as to what's actually happening in the buildings, this is kind of exactly what we encourage board members to let their principals know. So if you have a special area of interest, and so when you're going to be doing your school liaison visit, if you can let them know that, in fact, principals usually take me through the orchestra room, but that this is something you'd like to see in particular. They're more than happy to have any staff kind of walk you through what they're doing. So I would just encourage all board members, if you have a special area that you're particularly interested in operationally, that go ahead and absolutely follow up with your liaison schools as part of our own professional development. So
That makes sense, thank you.
you're welcome, and thank you for that. I have one question for Dr. Schatz on page 14. You're talking about they developed and now are implementing the Teacher Leadership Academy with NDSU. Could you just briefly explain what that is? I think there are quite a few that are unfamiliar with that new program.
I think I'll ask Bob to do that.
We have 18 teachers who have agreed to be part of a master's program, and there are 2 staff members from NDSU, Dr. Tom Hall and Dr. Ann Clapper, who, along with Rachel and myself, meet with these staff every other Thursday for 5 semesters. And what we are doing is we are teaching all of the courses in which these staff members will need to get their master's degree in leadership. And the nice part about it is we are fine-tuning it really to what does that mean here in Fargo. So as we talk about many of the examples, it's Fargo examples. When we talk about the curriculum component of it, it's what we're doing here in Fargo. When we're talking about budget, we're talking about the Fargo budget and really building a strong cadre of future leaders in the Fargo Public Schools. It has been a wonderful opportunity. They have met over the course of last year and into this summer, and they have 2 semesters left. One thing that will be coming to governance, or yes, when we begin to plan the agenda, is they have a project in which they are to do action research, and they are designing basically a poster in which they will walk people through their research, what they've done in the Fargo schools, and they would love to share that with you, with the board, so that you can see the outcome of the Teacher Leader Academy.
Great, thank you very much. Any other questions on the strategic plan? Great, there is a motion on the floor. All in favor, roll call vote, or excuse me, thank you, Anne Marie?
Goldenberg,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Knutson,
Yes.
Paulson,
Yes.
Rodenbiker,
Yes.
Ulrich,
Yes.
Ani,
Yes.
Benson,
Yes.
Boyd,
Yes, motion carries. Brings us to action on the mill levy discussion that we had at our retreat, and so this is the placeholder for taking action. I would actually entertain a motion to start the discussion. Jim?
I move that we put the mill levy authority question to a vote of the public on March 7th of 2017 at the specified number of mills certified by Cass County this fall for the school year 2016-17.
Second.
There's a motion, a second, thank you. This memo was designed to reflect some of the discussion and include some of the information that came out during the retreat. And I think in particular, describing the situation, but also some very specific information that I think is on the minds of taxpayers and interested parties. What will this mean for their own property taxes? And so what we're trying to make clear is how that would unfold with what we'll be asking for. Brock, I know you're ready to kind of walk us through this in a little more detail as well, if you would.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. As Linda stated, and we were all part of those conversations at the retreat, there's many questions that come up, and I think a lot of how do we get to taking action as far as a vote itself, trying to make sure that we can justify why it is that we need to have the specified levy. And so we use the standard of effort and really try to maintain where we're going. And I think in a nutshell, what this memo tries to do is get to the point that we're not, as a district, asking for more taxation. We're simply asking to be able to tax at our current level, and then also to be able to collect the valuation, taxes on the valuation increases, which is what is not happening. That's the net effect of the freeze. Just quickly through the bullet points, voting yes on this particular ballot measure doesn't increase taxes in and of itself. There's a lot of things that drive property tax. You each see a tax statement. You know what's on there if you take a look at that. We are but one portion of the tax bill, and so there's other things that would drive that. We talk a lot, we talk in planning a lot during budget time about generally, for people to just get a handle on it, the general rule of thumb is it's $4.50 per $100,000 in value for every mill that's levied. And so if people know the approximate value of their house, they can take that value and take $4.50 per 100,000 times the number of mills that are levied and get a general sense of that. But again, it's important for people to understand, as bullet 2 says, that's the school portion of the property tax bill when you think about what is the ask going to be and what would be approved. There's other portions that people need to keep in mind. As I said before, the goal here is to be able to collect on 100% of the valuation, and that is what's not happening currently. And the other thing, and Dr. Schatz has mentioned this many times, is that the Fargo Public School District has consistently reduced its mill levy through time. Partially at the mandate of the legislature, and partially by being good stewards of local funds and reducing the mill levy over time. And the fourth bullet really speaks specifically to that in the graph that's tied there, that through the years, the local taxpayer provides less in total dollars to the district for us to operate than we did in prior years. And some of that is because the legislature has done great work, and some of it is because you as a board have done great work at reducing the mill levy as well. And I think the real key here, and I know something that we talked a great deal about at the retreat, is what is the number, right? And it's important to know that the ELs require Dr. Schatz and I to bring you a balanced budget. We try to do that every single year. We've accomplished doing that every year that we've been here. And when we bring you that balanced budget, we submit that to the county, and the county does the math behind getting a certified number that you are allowed to levy. Rather than us pick a number and say we think it should be X or Y, I think it's important that we say whatever is certified this year, we balanced a budget on, and that was a lot of the discussion we had at the retreat, right? And so, to assure that in and of itself it's not an increase and that we're not looking at additional authority, to simply, once the county certifies our budget after, in late October, that would be the number that we would go out for a vote. And we will actually have a pretty good handle on that number by the time we do our zero mill levy meeting, which is tentatively scheduled for the 13th of September, because a lot happens between today and the 13th of September by the county to look at preliminary budgets and to try to put their packet together of what taxation will look like. And so you see in the memo that is bolded specifically to bring attention to the fact that allow the district to do what we're currently doing and avoid the issue that we saw in the past with some of those things. So that's really the points that came from the retreat that we tried to make sure that are relevant and certainly making the case for why it's important to go out to the public and what that ask should be. I know it may be hard to get our arms around not having a number yet, but until the county certifies, we're not going to have a number. And so I think that's important to keep in mind. And I'll try to answer any questions you might have in regards to that if you have any.
Dr. Schatz?
I just wanted to make this one comment too, and that when we talk about our current standard of effort and our current effort and whatever that gets certified at, I want to remind you that that is after we have had $5 million over the last couple of years of revenues that we no longer have. And we have adjusted the budget to that. And so this is not an increase. This is actually supporting what we've decreased in over the last couple of years too, above and beyond what the state had done with the mills and everything else. And so our budget is, like I told you before, adjusted to the point now where there is no give or take. And if the revenue forecast for the future does not turn around, the next step will be impact to programs and human resources. And so, as Brock has explained to you, I think, for your discussion here, that you need to consider looking at what the county certifies here and moving forward with a game plan then that would get that support. So, thank you.
So Dr. Schatz, just hang on just a second. You're next, Rebecca. So to be clear, we had this conversation at the retreat and at governance. The motion that was put out today is assuming that where we are, what gets certified, which we're guessing will be around 126 mills, which is lower than our previous mill levy of 139, where it's all shaken out to where that's because of the increase in valuation in the community and where we are with our budget trimming. We're at about 126, and it was the belief during the discussion at the retreat was if that is unfrozen and that becomes our levying authority, that as our community continues to grow and valuation continues to grow, that levying authority at 126 point whatever will be adequate. Is that what you're saying, Dr. Schatz, or because you've said this actually reflects a reduced position?
I want us to be very careful too, because 126 is not what's been certified. That's what we've talked about. And so we have not landed on a number yet, and I think we have to be very careful with that. In talking to Brock, they're starting to think it might land at about 129, but we don't know for sure, okay? And what I'm saying is that even at 129, 126, whatever it is that we go back and ask for, we have in the past, depending on what taxable valuation is, an increase in taxable valuation is, we have not always had to use all the dollars available to us, and therefore we've been able to actually reduce mills at those times. So it very well could be that if overall growth continues like it is and the numbers in valuation increases are high, we could even potentially, depending on what our budget is in the future, drop mills lower, depending on the needs and all the things that we want to do as a district. So the hard part in all of this, because I have people saying to me all the time, let's make it simple. It's not simple, it's complicated, and it has a lot of moving parts. But if you want to simplify it, basically the bottom line is that in the last 3 or 4 years, we have been very frugal with regard to our overall dollars and usage of dollars, and we have actually decreased overall expenditures in a lot of lines, even though, as Brock always says, our budget number goes up, but that's been salary and benefits and continuing increase in costs. But overall, we have not had access to lots of revenues lines that we used to have, and we cannot continue to have that hit if we want to continue to move forward. Because eventually, you know, if you're going to do economics, eventually the line crosses, the line going down, and then that impacts programs. So what we're currently doing, as we've readjusted our budget down, is what we're asking us to be able to continue to do as a district in providing programs, services, and all the things that we do for our students in our district.
Thank you. Rebecca and then David.
I'm feeling as if a decision on this today is premature, and that it would be best to know what that certification level is at before a decision is made. Secondly, I also feel like we will, no matter what, continue to operate in as tight and a frugal manner as possible. But our needs continue to rise. We continue to have new challenges for the district, more students, more needs, the discussions in regard to mental health, not knowing what will happen with the legislature. We can't fund the district, of course, on our own. We need legislative help and support. We need local support. We have federal support we rely on, and we have a community that has weighed in a variety of ways through our strategic planning, through our financial planning, through our long-range facility planning. And what I worry is that we'll be making a decision, possibly, that we might not be able to support the wishes of our community. So I'm just feeling right now that until we have that certification, I would prefer to wait. I'll listen to other conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. David?
I think my question piggybacks well on top of what Rebecca just said. Will the ballot language stipulate a specific number of mills? It won't simply say specified numbers as certified by Cass County.
Jim?
Has to have a specified mill. Rebecca, I have a question for you. I understand exactly your thought process, I think, but unless you're going to suggest that we actually ask for more in mill authority than actually comes out this fall, what's the advantage of waiting? Or are you thinking of asking for less than the current mill levy that will be assessed this fall?
Go ahead, Rebecca.
Okay, thank you. I guess that I would use as a pretty strong basis for my thought process what does end up being certified. And I felt as if during the retreat, yes, a lot of our conversation did focus around numbers, like you mentioned, Brock. we danced around those numbers a lot. And today we're not, we have an estimation in terms of where the mills might land, but in terms of the recommendation and the motion right now, it's uncertain. I guess I would just prefer to have that information in front of me to help me make the decision. Hopefully that answers your question.
Jim, are you finished or are you?
Yeah, I'm finished.
Okay, Dinah?
No, it didn't answer the question, though.
Dinah?
I guess I sort of understand Rebecca's question, but I guess maybe what I'm going to say will answer it. I think our general consensus was that whatever the mill levy value is today, whatever gets authorized in September or whatever, is the bare bones of what we probably want in terms of moving forward. I don't remember anyone being comfortable with the idea of asking for more than that. So regardless of what that number is, whether it's 126, 129, or 121, it's what we're living with today. And I'm comfortable with voting for this because I know that whatever that number is, it's what we're comfortable with and what we need for today in the long term. I don't think it's the philosophical question isn't to me what the number is, but what the value of it translates to. And I think Brock did I think a good job of explaining that. So I'm comfortable with this the way it's now.
I think when we were at the retreat there, and kind of getting back to Jim's comment, it was a binary question. Once we're unfrozen, but we have mill levy authority where we are, do we believe that over time the growth of our community will keep up or even outpace our needs as it has in the past? The growth of our community has outpaced our needs and we have reduced the mills. Or the other side of that binary question was, do we ask for more? And what the staff put forward was option 2, which was 130 mills, kind of picking a number, saying, let's ask for a little padding. And the consensus I think you're referring to was, the last time we asked for padding, it did not go well. And if the message is, wherever the levy authority is today, we're confident that that will suit our needs into the future. And I don't know if that, and that's why it doesn't really matter what the number is, because what we're asking is where we're at today or more authority. Brock, you had your hand up.
Yeah, Madam President, members of the board, kind of to build on that and maybe to your original question, Linda, there's really two parts to this. What the number is partially important because that gives you authority. But what the valuation increase is what drives what happens, because in the 6 years I've been here, those valuation increases have ranged from 1.8% to just over 10% projection in this current year. So whether we know the number today or not, it's always if valuations do X. Let's say it is 129. That's great if valuations continue to grow at 10%. We probably aren't going to need that all. But if valuations go back to 1.8%, now we've got different questions, right? And so that's the piece we're not going to know. And no matter when we make the decision, we only know that projecting a year or two out. And even that is a best estimate. So I think the valuation, it's almost impossible to answer the question, will this, I know there was some talk at the retreat of, can you tell us this will be enough? Well, if I were an economist that could tell you what valuations are going to do for the next 10 years, likely I wouldn't be sitting here. I mean, it's just, right? That's the problem that we're not going to know. So keep that in mind. It's a moving target. But look at your history. Your history would tell you you haven't used all the authority you've had available to you.
Thank you. Anyone else? David?
The concern I have isn't with having the election. It's, as I've spoken to some people before, it's the timing. And I think that was reinforced by some of the emails that I've been getting, and some of the rest of you may have gotten, from seniors who are concerned about the March vote because of the fact that many of them haven't come back from the South yet. And I can understand that, but what really concerned me was in a couple of the emails, they stated that they thought that this date was being specifically picked so that their votes wouldn't be cast. And I know that anybody can cast an absentee ballot, but it's a hassle. And I think our low voter turnout on any election we see is enough to say that if people feel hassled, they're just simply not gonna vote. And I don't want to hold an election when a group of people thinks that we have orchestrated it so that they're left out. And that's what concerned me about these emails.
Linda?
Rebecca?
I'm in support of a March 7th election date. That is not a concern of mine. And yes, I know that there are people that are out of town that would be voting during that time frame. They would likely go personally to the polls, but there are many ways for people to vote nowadays. There are more opportunities for voting in elections recently than there have been in years past. And the fact of the matter is voter turnout is low no matter what election. We always want more people, or at least I do, want more people engaged in the process. But even if we looked at, for example, a summer election date, and we want to talk about persons that might not be as engaged, then we could be talking about perhaps some of our teachers and some of our parents because of summer breaks. So, I think we're always going to have possibly a group that says maybe you've decided the election date because of you're trying to target one group or another or exclude one group or another. I don't think that our decision on election days, at least for myself, is based on that at all. So people that want to vote can vote. There is absolutely no reason that people can't vote. It could be that they need to do a little bit more work to cast their vote, but if it's really important to them, they will cast either their yes or no vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. And I think we can assure our public that that absolutely was our goal, is to have the highest possible voter turnout. And I think seniors, a lot of whom leave in October, I mean, they certainly know how to vote absentee in November. So I think that was a small group of people that shared that concern. But I think we'll just have to reassure our public that we picked the time in the calendar when we felt it would be the clearest space for us to be as clear as possible, get our message out there, and answer as many questions as possible. Any other questions? I think if there's not a lot more discussion, we'll take our vote and take a break and come back for the rest of the agenda. But I want to make sure we've heard all the questions that are out there. John?
Could we get a reminder of the motion on the floor before we vote, please?
The motion is in front of you at the end of the memo. Jim, did you put a couple extra words in there, or did you read it as it was? It was as the recommended motion? Okay. Any other questions? Anne Marie, call the roll, please.
Johnson.
Yes.
Knutson.
Yes.
Paulson.
Yes.
Roenbiker.
Yes.
Ulrich.
Yes.
Ani.
Yes.
Benson.
Yes.
Goldenberg.
Yes.
Boyd.
Yes. Thank you all. We'll take a short break and be back at 6:45. We'll get back in gear here. This brings us to our committee and liaison assignments. So thank you to everyone who either knowingly or unknowingly found themselves where they've been assigned. Thank you to those who have agreed to serve as chair. I think we're going to have a terrific year, and each one of those committees does important work. So I'm so grateful for folks willing to step up and do that work. As you may know, the governance committee is comprised of the chairs of the standing committees, so that's where that membership came from. And the additional assignments, I hope that's okay with everyone. If anyone has any concerns about these, let me know if you would rather be shuffled around, but otherwise I would entertain a motion to approve these assignments. John,
So moved.
is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. There's a motion and second to approve the committee and liaison assignments. Any discussion or questions? Anne Marie, if you would call the roll, please.
Knutson,
Yes.
Paulson,
Yes.
Rohnbiker,
Yes.
Ulrich,
Yes.
Ani,
Yes.
Benson,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Boyd.
Yes, thank you. And committee chairs, if you have any questions about convening your committee, finding a meeting time, what the meeting time has been, anything like that, just reach out to Anne Marie and she'll take things from there. So thanks again. Brings us to the GP2E revisions, memo 15. What you see there is just in that initial paragraph, and that just aligns our GP2E with our current practice of how we convened those meetings, where the final meeting of the old board was that final meeting, and then the reorganization meeting was held strictly with the new members. So this is just a change in language that reflects that. I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve GP2E as presented. Any questions or comments? Anne Marie?
Paulson,
Yes.
Rohnbiker,
Yes.
Ulrich,
Yes.
Ani, Benson,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Knutson,
Yes.
Boyd.
Yes, thank you. Brings us to NDSBA resolutions. Jim?
Thank you. For those of you that are new, every year, school districts across North Dakota have the right to submit possible resolutions for consideration to the State School Board Association. And we obviously hold our annual conference in October, and resolutions are voted either up or down at that particular conference. Not all school districts submit resolutions, although we historically have probably been more verbose at submitting than probably any other district in the state. Based upon what we currently have as a legislative agenda, which I think got covered at our retreat, I don't believe we have a need to submit any freestanding resolutions, because I think they're already covered by existing standing resolutions or resolutions that are going to be acted on at the state conference. And just to kind of walk through every one, what we're seeing at the state level versus what we have. Our first and biggest priority legislatively is to ask for sustainable long-term funding. There are lots of pieces to that. Obviously, we'd like them to continue the level of support they're currently at in per pupil foundation aid, which is remarkable compared to where it was when I started on the Fargo School Board. The state has truly stepped to the plate. But it's not just the foundation aid formula. We also would like, if at all possible, more dollars to be addressed in that funding formula to really get closer to covering 100% of the additional expense for both special education and English language learners. There are actually 5 specific resolutions already in front of the state board and the state conference that do just these items. One is that K-12 adequacy of funding be maintained by the state, which is kind of an overriding big umbrella saying step to the plate, fund 70%. We have another one that's very specific to English language learners. Actually, we had submitted it a couple of years ago, and that is that we'll support state ensuring program funding equity for school districts, including full funding of the costs associated with English language learners. That one isn't even going to be voted on. That's a standing resolution, so that will be something that the state board will be advocating for and lobbying towards. And obviously, it's part and parcel with what we need. This is one we haven't talked a lot about at the retreat. Certainly, we've talked about it in the past, but school districts are currently paid on last year's enrollment. And then there is a separate formula that if you grew enough from last year to this fall, you might be eligible for additional foundation aid payments. But that particular funding formula for growing districts gets just about impossible for the largest districts to qualify for because there's a percentage threshold. So while we'll probably see, we don't have the number yet, but I'll say 100 to 150 new students this fall compared to what we ended the spring with, we won't see any foundation aid money for them for the full first year that we're educating them. There is a resolution that again is a standing resolution for the state board that we allow districts that are growing to be paid on the fall enrollment number as opposed to the spring number and this formula that only allows for a few districts to actually participate that are getting fall enrollment numbers. You have to have that magic golden child to actually hit the funding formula. So that's already in place. There are 2 specific ones to special education as well. One is that we're going to support efforts to develop an appropriate funding level and provide a mechanism for the distribution of those monies earmarked for special education back to school districts. And the second one is that it is fully funded the additional cost for special education for local school districts. And that is to include both the traditional special ed students, but also the gifted and talented students. So the biggest thing that we have front and center on our legislative agenda is already embedded in what the state board is going to do. We have 2 other topics that we are definitely, one we're going to be watching and participating in if legislation comes out. That has to do with restraint and seclusion policies. And I think part of our game plan as we discussed it at GAC and with Dr. Schatz's advice is we're going to really make sure our local legislators before they get to Bismarck understand what we have in place in Fargo. This is a hot topic nationwide. And because of that, it gets political legs when you get a mess of politicians together in Bismarck. And we want to make sure before they go out there and start crafting law that we have to implement that impacts us, impacts our staff, impacts our students. They number one, understand what is or isn't a problem in North Dakota. And then number 2, what do we actually do here in the Fargo School District? So when they're out in Bismarck, they can hopefully be educated and represent the needs we have as a school district. Because much of what you might see in the nightly news, because somebody had a cell phone and videotaped an SRO officer taking down a female student in North Carolina, is not an activity that you're ever going to be finding in a Fargo public school setting. Different sets of guidelines and rules. So I think Dr. Schatz is going to really spend some time with our local area legislators, getting them up to speed anticipating this will become a hot potato in the legislative session. The other one, and I'm kind of working, quite frankly, with legislators outside of the Fargo district and school board members across the state, is to put language in place to allow voters to authorize taxing authority past either the duration of a bond or past what's currently embedded in statute for general funds, which is a 10-year sunset. Leaving the 10-year sunset in place unless the voters actually specifically approved a longer duration, which currently isn't allowed under state law. Just to be real frank, I think we'll have a better success amending that part of the century code if it's not driven by Fargo, because this rule was put in, for lack of a better way to put it, to punish Fargo. So we're going to try and skin that cat a little different way if possible. So those were our current identified legislative topics. I think they're covered pretty well by what the state already has in place. But obviously, as I think we shared at the retreat, and I know we've shared it at earlier meetings, once things start heating up and we see more bills coming forward, who knows what directions they're going to go. And we certainly, as a board, will have to be weighing in and probably taking positions to give some direction to our administrative team, and obviously some direction to the legislators that represent the Fargo School District out in Bismarck. Any questions? Sorry for the long report.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. Thank you for all your work on that. Dr. Schatz?
One other thing too that I think we need to consider, and this has recently kind of come to light, and that is, maybe Brock, you want to just take a very short piece on this and just try to explain it, but this double jeopardy that we're going to experience with the frozen mill levy and how that, with the foundation aid payment and the 60 mil deduct, I want you to just remind everybody what that is and how that's going to impact us moving forward. And that's, again, another legislative piece to that bill that possibly could be adjusted.
What happens in the funding formula is you get the ADM, average daily membership, and then you get all of your factors, and you come to a total number, and then that is, bless you, that is then multiplied by the foundation aid payment of $96.46. That gives you a total allotment that you get for your ADM. What happens then is there are adjustments. You get an adjustment for the required local effort, and that adjustment is 60 mils. So the value of 60 mils gets subtracted. Then there's other adjustments that happen, and then you get down to your total payment. So by example, we collected about I'll round this for you, roughly $97 million this year. Our allotment was about $119 million. But after adjustments, then you get down. So that's the portion that's expected to come from a local effort, it's called. Well, what happens in our situation in Fargo is the deduction for local effort will rise because the valuation has risen. But we will not collect additional dollars. So last year they subtracted 60 times $317,000. That was the deduction. Next year it'll be 60 times the proposed valuation increase of $350,000, and that will be deducted. Theoretically, what you collect in property tax would offset the deduction, but because we're frozen, that will not happen. The legislature put in a hold harmless provision to avoid your local effort not covering your deduction, but not on this end of the scale. It was so that when the big boom was happening out west and valuations were going up by 50%, and there was the 12% maximum. At one point, Williston or Dickinson and some of those maybe could only levy 55 mils. So their deduct was 55, not 60. The hold harmless provision protected them. But there's not a hold harmless on the other end because why? Nobody was in that situation when it was put in there. And I think people, although we knew it may happen, it wasn't on the radar. You've touched on this a little bit with our budgeting window about all of a sudden, it's not 6 years out, it's today. And so I had this conversation with the county, I had it with DPI, and there was a little bit of a, oh yeah, I guess that's right. And so I think nobody had it on their radar screen. And so you have to remember that we're going to have a deduction larger than what we would collect as the offset because our local side is frozen. And I don't know how we start down that road. Sorry, no good advice for you there.
And that's, and this just accentuates why this is so difficult to understand. But what people need to understand is that a deduct for our local effort is gonna increase while our dollars are froze where normally they would increase. And so it's a double jeopardy. And let's say that goes on for 3-4 years. And a mill at 317,000, like it is right now, and that's where we're froze, is now 350. That's 375. That's 380. That's the deduct that hits us. And so, doesn't it make sense that if you're froze at a certain level, that's the deduct, 317, moving forward until that changes, rather than increasing with valuation. So I think that's really a critical point when we go out and try to talk about this too, to try to make it simple, if you can.
Yeah. Any other questions for Jim? Great, thanks. Brings us to board reports. The joint meeting of the city, parks, and schools. To bring you a little bit of history, over the last several years, we started originally 3 meetings a year that were hosted by the elected bodies taking turns. So that in 1 year, each, the cities would host one, the school district would host one, or the City of Fargo School District and the Fargo Park District. And it was started as an effort to get those 3 bodies together, physically together in a room, to get to know each other a little better, to talk about some of the issues that each one was dealing with, kind of an educational thing. Over the years, I think the school district has probably been the most enthusiastic of the 3 partners, but once we actually get everybody in a room, everybody, I think, appreciates and enjoys being there. But here is what I'm asking you to think about and come up with some suggestions. You know, over time, it kind of morphed into the lead staff giving presentations and the elected officials kind of sitting around, and, you know, there'd be some discussion or whatever, but the real value in those evenings would be, you know, the half-hour social where we're chit-chatting, and during some of this discussion, the real value was in the elected officials getting to know each other. And I think sometimes that got on not quite as strong a track as just kind of hearing presentations. And so it's our turn to host, and since all 3 of these elected bodies have so many new members, I think that's more important than ever, that somehow we come up with a format that facilitates discussion, whether we have different tables and we have, you know, topics at each table. You know how you do those things and kind of get to know who you're dealing with. So typically, governance asks the board members for suggested topics and kind of culls that down and comes up with what we present. Anne Marie asks the other 2 parties what they would like to put on the agenda. But I'd like to come up with a little bit of a different approach, and I've asked Dr. Schatz, who's kind of a wizard at facilitating things, to come up with ideas too. But in the next few weeks, if you'd like to think about, if you have an idea of something you think is an effective way to do that, a practice that you've seen at other meetings that you thought worked really well, if you have some topics that you think we should present, just pass those along to me or your committee chair for them to bring to a governance committee, because that's what we'll be working on. If you look, I'll be passing out my report, but the date has been set for September 28th. And we also made a bit of a a recommendation that came out of governance. It's not going to be actually voted on, but just another thing to keep in mind and give us some feedback. But in the past, we've had these at a local establishment where we could have like a social hour with a cash bar. And because we're a school district, that's a little iffier. And especially when, of course, the media is invited and attends. And if, the last time it was just kind of noted in the article, well, yes, over cocktails, they got to know, blah, blah, blah. So we thought, since we're the hosts, let's not do that. But rather, let's use it as an opportunity to show off one of our new facilities. So we tentatively had it scheduled at our new Eagles Elementary. And so that at 5:30, instead of a social, that would be appetizers and tours. And we're pretty sure that they'll be happy to have some students leading the tours, and that's always delightful. And then this meeting would start at 6. So I'm just kind of asking you to think about that and give us your suggestions. So committee liaison correspondence reports. Jim, is there anything left?
Sure. First of all, for those of you that are now on the planning committee, we'll probably send out a communication in the next week or so indicating a tentative first meeting date. So watch for that in your email. Outside of that, I want to personally thank Anne Marie for all of her work on coordinating and keeping us on track at the picnic. I think it turned out perfect, as always. We have an SEEC board meeting tomorrow. And then I fly out Thursday for a national school board meeting in Chicago for the rest of the week. That's it.
Thank you. Jennifer, anything?
So I would say, I guess, something similar about the communications committee in terms of times we want to meet. Perhaps I think I can get together with Anne Marie and send out a survey. Typically, before we met on the second Monday over the noon hour. Anne Marie, can we just put a couple date options, or can we just solicit? Her and I can talk about it, and we'll do the same thing, but that's all I have to report.
Thank you. John?
That picnic was really cool. I love that. I love that we do that for our staff. That's just fantastic. Really blew me away. A few other things. On the 28th of July, I went over to Agassi Woodrow Wilson for their new playground open house. And particularly noteworthy because it's an accessible playground, which means that especially designed for kids that don't have all the mobility of other kids. It's wheelchair, I saw that day, stroller accessible. Some neighborhood family was taking advantage of that. Really great equipment. Connie Nelson was there, who I think kind of pulled all this together. It was accomplished through a joint effort of Fargo Public Schools, but also the city, the parks, several area foundations, and a rep from the vendor was there to talk about what all was happening. And Principal Berkman was there as well. Everybody very excited about it. It's a great addition to the neighborhood. It was desperately needed. I live a couple blocks east of there, and there really wasn't anything like that for those families in that area. I've heard anecdotally that there's some stay-at-home daycares that have figured out the school schedule so that they bring their kids over, they know when the school is releasing their kids out to play, and so they kind of clear out. So they've come to a kind of a nice arrangement like that. And it's just been a great, successful partnership for everybody in the community. That was a really great event. Somewhat related to that, this past weekend, nothing official, we stopped by Hawthorne Playground with my children, and it definitely meets their approval. They love that new playground. It's really cool. They have some musical instruments on the playground that I've never seen anything like that before, which was really exciting. A big xylophone, 3 big drums that have just really great sound when you're standing there. And what's amazing is I don't know how it works. I was thinking, oh man, are we gonna get some complaints from the neighbors because we're just standing in front of them? You already have.
They work at 2 a.m.
Yeah, but I drove by last night, and there were two kids just banging on the xylophone and the drums. I could see them just like flailing on them. My windows were down, had the radio off. I couldn't hear anything within, the other side of the street. So I don't know who somebody with better hearing is complaining about it.
That's awesome.
So that's fantastic. And a little bit more serious note, I attended the second Eyes Wide Open Forum on the 20th of July. I don't think we've met since then. And I think Dr. Schatz has really had similar statements that I would have had about that event, what the school district needs to be doing for that. Sobering, but I think the community is really coming together, and our school district is having an appropriate response to it.
Great, thank you, John. Rebecca, anything?
I will, it's repeating what Jim and Jennifer said in regard to meeting times, but for the GAC committee, so we'll send out some information on that. And the picnic was amazing. I was able to make contact with my contacts at the early childhood special education spot, Carrie Ragey, and at North High with Andy Dolan. I believe I missed Bobby Olson at Madison. I'm sure he was at the picnic, but I unfortunately wasn't able to visit with him. But making contacts with those folks to set up initial conversations and meetings in regard to our goals moving forward. And that's it. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Rebecca. Brandy?
The picnic was awesome. Ditto to everything everybody else said. It was really, really, I think everybody really enjoyed it. There was a lot of people there, and it was nice.
Great.
So thank you, Anne Marie.
Thank you. Christy?
Same sentiment on the picnic, and then also I've had some email communication with Jeff from Centennial Elementary, the principal, and I'll be meeting with him, and then I will also meet with the others that are on my liaison list. I look forward to that.
Great, thank you. David?
Nothing at this time.
Great. So yes, the picnic, and Anne Marie, thanks for all your help, and chefs, good job. Oh, yes, Jennifer.
I just had one comment. I just wanted to say a thank you to Dr. Schatz for your participation this morning. And I'm not certain what the title was, but Senator Heitkamp was here, and various community leaders throughout the area were there to talk about basically, was it Eyes Wide Open was the title? So this issue that is happening, nationwide, but here in our community as well, and what we can do proactively as a community in our collaborations to curb what's happening. But he had some very wonderful things to say about our students, and I just wanted to say that I, for one, appreciated his involvement there. So
Great, thank you. Dr. Schatz, do you want to, I know that meeting came together kind of quickly, but is there anything you'd like to add?
Well, it was Heidi Heitkamp, and what Heidi does is she puts together forums like that on certain issues, and this is on the opiate issue, and so it was just another part of the conversation as a community, and a lot of different organizations represented, and then folks there. So as I said at the forum today, is that an issue like this needs to continue to be talked about, and so every time we have one of these things, it's just another opportunity to have that conversation. And I think that you're starting to see a real collaboration and a coalition of lots of agencies and groups and people now realizing that we need to work together on this. This isn't an isolated issue for any one particular group. And I just reiterated the fact that as a school district, we'll step up and do what we can, but we are just one piece of the pie, and we can't do it all. So, and I think that was well received, and I think we'll continue to do what we can. We're planning for the next event at Fargo South, and we will be involved in that, and I'll be actually speaking at that too. So,
Great, thank you. You have my report. Something I'd like to call your attention to, this chamber event, the Eggs and Issues. Our own Dr. Schatz will be one of the presenters on September 6th, and so that was a conflict with our regularly scheduled governance committee. So we've been shuffling that around a little bit, and then we're in the process of, and I think we actually have finally settled on a new regular meeting date, to move it off of that first Tuesday, because that's typically when they do have those chamber eggs and issues events, and they often have really worthwhile topics. So we thought, let's move our meeting off of that time. And so if board members would like to attend those, you'd be free to do it. So I guess I would give a little plug for Dr. Schatz's sake, because he's been pestering me tirelessly about this. I've about had it. So on September 7th, if you would like to come support your local superintendent, I think it'd be greatly appreciated. And then don't. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, the 6th, see? Oh, my gosh, I'm looking at this big fat paragraph here. And then pictures, we need to get your pictures taken, because those are the ones that go on your official stuff. So, and please remember to forward any suggestions you have for that City Parks and School meeting. Anybody else have any
President
comments on
Boyd?
anything? Yes.
Can I just note too on the eggs and issues, that does require pre-registration, and I am happy to take care of that for you, and for this event or any future one. So if you just want to let me know if you see those coming up and you want to attend, happy to do that for you. But then specifically for this one, if you want to RSVP to me, and then I can get that taken care of, that'd be great.
Great, thank you. Anything else? Our next meeting is August 23rd. Thank you, we're adjourned.